In the royal polo field, the second daughter of the Zhang family fell from her horse in panic. Out of instinct, Xianxia pushed me aside to save her. I hit the ground, mouth full of mud, blood streaming from my nose. Furious beyond measure, I threw away my title as princess and noble consort alike, and fled straight back to Qianzhou, to find the husband who used to cry at the slightest grievance. But this time, that husband neither cried nor smiled. Limping slightly, he led a child with a blank face by the hand. His gaze fell on my drenched and disheveled spring robe. Word by word, his voice cut like iron. "You abandoned your husband and your child, how dare you come back? I'm not marrying him anymore." The words fell, and the air in and outside the imperial hall froze. My imperial uncle, who was applying medicine to me, paused mid-movement. His sharp, narrow eyes flicked toward me. The silhouette of Xianxia kneeling behind the screen went rigid. Perhaps seeing my red nose and disheveled state, my uncle softened his gaze slightly and sighed. "So little injury, and you already can't bear it. Back in Qianzhou, when you climbed mountains and crossed rivers, I never heard you cry once." At the mention of my hometown, I pursed my lips, forcing down the heat stinging my eyes. It's different now. Before my uncle became emperor, our family was just a poor military household deep in the mountains, no rules, no ranks. I rode horses through forests, fell countless times, and always found it exhilarating. Now, after a single war crowned my uncle on the throne, I too became unmatched in wealth and status. Even my husband had to be chosen among the most brilliant noble sons of the capital. The Yao family, 3 dukes in 4 generations. Once, they were names spoken only by storytellers, even dreaming of them was beyond reach. My uncle chose such a man for me, soon to bestow the title of princess. I should have been delighted. Yet I could never forget the first time I saw Xianxia in the capital, the fleeting glance he gave me before bowing. Cold. Distant. Repressed disdain. I thought, of course. Who would be happy to marry a country girl who suddenly rose to fortune? Still, everyone said I liked him. He had refined brows and calm eyes, bright as the March rivers and mountains of Qianzhou, stirring a strange familiarity, as if he had always belonged to me. For an entire year, I tried every way to win his favor, hoping he'd truly know me before the wedding, at least see that I wasn't as dull as the rumors claimed. I read more books than most noble ladies. Though my embroidery was poor, my swallows looked like ducks. When colleagues mocked the embroidered pouch he carried, he still kept it close. So I thought, perhaps, he had begun to care for me. Until today, on the polo field, when I saw, with my own eyes, the panic on his face as he rushed toward the newly arrived second Miss Zhang. Someone like him always cared about appearances, yet his jade crown had fallen off completely. He shoved me from horseback, abandoning his mallet, and threw himself down to save the Zhang girl who had fallen. I hit the ground hard, mouth full of dirt, blood pouring from my nose. If I hadn't dodged the jagged rock hidden in the grass, my face might have been ruined. That impact shattered something inside me. How could he treat me like that? I hadn't done anything wrong, yet it felt like betrayal. Though he had never said he liked me, deep down I had always believed that the mist in his eyes could hold only me, as if it had always been that way. I don't even know where that faith came from. But if he no longer wanted me, then no matter how much I liked him, I would not lower myself and lose my dignity. I begged my imperial uncle to dissolve the engagement. Too naive of me. He clasped my hand, his gaze deep and unreadable, carrying the chill of an emperor's indifference. Calling me by my childhood name, his tone was laced with layered meaning. "Elder sister Ai, you're my only kin. You must help me, don't make it hard for your uncle." The marriage alliance with the Yao family was a matter of state, not sentiment. Love had no place in it. In the cold March spring, I bowed my head, eyes fixed on the fierce dragon patterns embroidered on my uncle's robe. A strange chill crept through me. I wanted to return to Qianzhou. Truthfully, I didn't remember much about Qianzhou. The palace nurse told me that my uncle's coup had been chaotic, that my parents had perished in it, and that I had fallen from a carriage, losing part of my memory. She said she had nursed me there for years. That though Xianzhou was remote, its seasons were beautiful, spring with blossoms, winter with snow, summer ponds lush with green where we rode horses and flew falcons, autumn bright with crimson maples like burning fire. Her eyes softened as she smoothed the silk garment she had sewn for me. When you were little, my lady, you cried until His Majesty took you to see the festival. He got annoyed and threw you to someone else before running off to gamble on rooster fights. When he came home, the lady beat him half to death, said he nearly let you be kidnapped by traffickers. If it hadn't been for... She paused, sealing her lips, then murmured, anyway, you must obey His Majesty. He's your uncle. He'll never harm you. My head throbbed like needles. I frowned. If it hadn't been for what? Who did he throw me to? No one important, she said quickly, shaking out the silk dress. You look best in pale yellow, it makes you soft as spring willow. Perfect for the spring banquet, for young Master Yao to see. I had no interest in it at all. My uncle had just ascended the throne, the spring banquet was to be lavish, filled with noble families and court officials. If not for the accident on the polo field, today should have been the day I was officially conferred as a princess, and by the end of the month, I would have married Yao Zongxia. But I had been stubborn and refused to bow. I angered my uncle. The cold shadow of his back that day seemed to promise he would teach me a lesson. At first, I didn't care. As the nurse said, he was emperor now, but also my uncle. How could he harm me? Yet with just one casual remark at the spring banquet, he struck me down harder than any whip. He summoned General Zheng and asked if his second daughter would be willing to become the emperor's adopted daughter. The entire banquet fell silent. Across from me, Yao Zongxia's hand tightened around his wine cup. General Zhang paled, dragging his family to kneel. Your Majesty, my daughter is of humble birth, how dare she accept such grace? Everyone thought my uncle did this to warn the Zhang and Yao families, to restore my honor after the humiliation on the polo field. But I realized he was warning me. He chuckled faintly. My bloodline is thin. General Zhang has served the realm. This honor is only fitting. Around me, countless eyes turned, sharp as blades. My face went pale. I looked at my uncle. He didn't look back. His features were cold, carved in stone, saying without words. Even without you, I can still forge an alliance with the nobility. But you, without me, are nothing. The second daughter of the Zhang family was adopted into the imperial clan, granted the title of Princess Baochang. My own conferment never came. Soon, whispers began to spread through the court, and even within the palace, that I had fallen from favor. The nurse urged me to humble myself before my uncle. I pretended not to hear. She sighed. Stubbornness runs in your blood. But I felt oddly free. Quietly, I said. Perhaps being a princess isn't as good as being a wild country girl again. She called me foolish. Yet I wasn't. I remembered something. In Xianzhou, I had a family. An old dog. And in our storage house, a boy my mother had bought as my companion husband. A young boy with fine features like the rivers and mountains of Xianzhou, eyes languidly bright, so like Yao Zongxia's. He once fought off traffickers to save me, his face scratched bloody, a deep scar left by his eye. One stormy night, the thunder split the sky. And that scar suddenly blazed clear in my memory. I remembered everything. At 15, I had already bowed before the altar and become his wife. My uncle had hidden this truth from me. So I hid it from him in turn, pretending that I remembered nothing, letting him raise the Zhang family's second daughter ever higher for whatever purpose he sought. He took my palace, stripped me of my ceremonial robe, and even cut down the crabapple tree he had once planted for me, simply because the Zhang girl disliked it. Rumors began to spread outside, Whispers that the Zhang girl was in truth my uncle's own blood. Yao Zongxia should have been pleased. The tide of favor was shifting in his direction. He could have used it to request that the emperor annul our marriage. After all, marrying the woman he loved, another royal daughter, would only tighten the bond between nobility and throne. I sent a secret letter, hinting that he should do exactly that. But he came instead, dark circles shadowing his eyes, stopping me by the Jinming Lake. He looked as if he hadn't slept for days. He said I should stop sulking. Once, twice, I could still endure it, but not forever. Heaven and earth. Who was enduring whom? After realizing that the affection I once held for him was nothing but a misplaced reflection of my childhood betrothed, I no longer found any joy in looking at him. I stood straight, putting distance between us. My voice was calm. Sir, I'm helping you. Once the engagement is broken, you can marry the woman you love, and I'll return to Qianzhou. Neither of us owes the other. What better outcome could there be? Yao Zongxia stared at me as if I'd stabbed him, disbelief burning in his eyes. After a long silence, he let out a low, cold laugh. Fine. Very fine. Just don't regret it. That day, he went to plead for annulment, kneeling in the pouring rain outside the imperial hall for 2 full hours, dissolving whatever shallow bond had once existed between us into mist. As for me, when I requested permission to return to Qianzhou, my uncle merely looked past me, indifferent. From that moment on, every power within the court turned toward the Zhang girl. She came to my overgrown palace garden, gleaming with jewels, her hair pinned with a golden hairpin carved into a crabapple blossom, the same one that my childhood betrothed had given me long ago as a wedding gift. I racked my memory, trying to recall what grudge there had ever been between us. All I knew was that we were from the same homeland. Yet ever since she had risen in status, she had told me that everything I possessed was something I had stolen from her. Perhaps she truly was of my uncle's blood. If so, reclaiming her noble birthright was only natural. But that hairpin was not hers. I asked her to return it. She brushed the pin with her fingers, laughing softly, eyes gleaming with frost. Yuan Ai, you're always like this. Pretending to have forgotten everything, as if you were the most innocent creature under heaven. But how will you pay for the debts you owe to others? Her tone turned sharp. With a flick of her wrist, she tore the pin from her hair and hurled it into the lake. You want it? Then go fetch it. Before I could think, I dove into the water, still cold from late spring. The icy current cleaved heaven and earth apart. Through the blur, I heard 2 trembling voices calling my name. Yuan Ai. Perhaps I misheard. Who would worry for me now? I clutched the hairpin tight, ready to swim up, but weeds coiled around my ankles, dragging me down. It's over, I thought. Just as my lungs began to burn, 2 strong arms seized me from either side and pulled me out of the water. I coughed violently, gasping for air. Not far away, the Zhang girl stood frozen in shock. Both my uncle's and Yao Zongxia's hair was disheveled, water dripping from their long locks onto my shoulders. For a brief moment, their faces looked pained. You truly wish to return to Qianzhou? My uncle asked, his gaze fixed on me. I frowned, coughed twice, and raised my head. There's someone waiting for me there. A sigh fell above me. My uncle stood, his voice quiet, echoing Yao Zongxia's words. Don't regret it. Regret what? In Qianzhou, my childhood husband was waiting, the boy who had once treated me with such tenderness. His voice still called to me in dreams, come back. Return home. So I left the palace behind. On a drizzling day at the end of March, I walked the rain-soaked roads of Qianzhou, following memory's faint trace to a weathered gate buried under blooming roses. Knock, knock. No answer. I crouched beneath the eaves to wait. The rhythm of rain lulled me to sleep. When I woke to a distant clap of thunder, 2 pairs of cloth shoes stood before me, one large, one small. I looked up instinctively. The child's eyes were clear as glass beads, his face a perfect reflection of his father's. The man beside him, tall and broad-shouldered, stood half-shrouded beneath his umbrella, a block of tofu dangling from his hand. His lips were pale and tightly pressed, his voice was colder than the rain. "What are you doing back here?" I scrambled to my feet, drenched hair clinging to my face, my mind in chaos. "That child." The man tilted his umbrella slightly. Sharp eyes, narrow as blades, swept across me. His jaw was angular, his tone heavy as stone. "You've forgotten." "How dare you forget?" "I haven't," I lied quickly. "No, I haven't." I forced a smile, desperate. "He's our child, isn't he?" The man's expression shifted, unreadable. The boy looked up at me, eyes calm, emotionless, black and white as ink and snow. I hesitated, wanting to reach out but too afraid. Too afraid to say something heartless like "he's grown so big already." Abandoning a husband and leaving a child behind, such a mountain of guilt crushed my chest. I wished I could tear open my lost memories, piece them back together one by one. Who was this man? How old was the child? How had they lived this past year? I had forgotten them. But why? Why had they never come to find me? The rain grew louder in the strange silence, drumming on the banana leaves like water dousing a dying flame. Achoo! A cold breeze swept through, making me shiver. I covered my mouth, sneezing softly. The man's long, slender fingers tightened on the umbrella handle. After a moment's hesitation, his arm tilted slightly, angling the umbrella toward me. "It's raining," he said quietly. Lop, lop. Petals of the climbing roses were beaten down by the wind, mingling with the mud beneath our feet, entangled, inseparable. The child walked between us, glancing left at me, right at his father. Half his body was soaked, his clear eyes reflecting some thought too deep to speak. Under the small eaves, the drizzle fell like silk threads. The courtyard was not large, yet every tree and blade of grass had been tended with care. The swing still looked new. A bird's nest hid among the crabapple branches. Even the stable in the corner was spotless, an old horse lazily bent its neck, chewing dry hay. As we walked along the veranda, my gaze caught the uneven knife marks carved into a pillar, growing higher with every inch, tracing the height of 2 children over the years. Beside them were crooked words. 2 Yuan Ai, Zhao Jiazong. I silently mouthed the name before lifting my head toward the tall, slender figure ahead. He walked slowly, his leg was lame, yet he carried no cane. Beneath the flowers and spring rain, his shoulders rose and fell unevenly, lonely, dignified. There were few servants in the estate now, all old retainers who had served the family for decades. When they saw me, they froze for a heartbeat, then smiled warmly. "The young lady has returned." The old gardener in the flower field straightened up, shielding his eyes with a straw hat. "Whose young lady is this?" he called loudly. "Why's Jiazong bringing a strange girl home?" The old woman beside him smacked his arm. "You blind old fool. That's our young lady." I met their gazes, a wave of familiarity swelling in my chest, but I couldn't recall their names. I pressed my lips into a faint smile. Unexpectedly, the old man threw down his hoe and scowled. "I understand now. That brat from the Yao family must have bullied our lady." "Humph. Does he think the Chu family has no one left just because the master and madam are gone? Come. Saddle my black stallion, I'll ride to the capital myself and demand justice from that pompous fop." I blinked in shock. The old woman hastily grabbed his sleeve. "Oh heavens, old Jing, you can't even see straight anymore, and now you've gone senile too. No one dares bully our lady, not when she's got the second lord in the palace watching over her." She turned to me with an apologetic smile. Right, you must be home to pay respects to the late master and madam. I heard you're soon to be married, what a blessing. The ancestors will rest easy knowing you've found such a fine match." Zhao Jiazong stopped mid-step. His head turned slightly, the courtyard fell silent. I hurried to follow him. A long moment passed before he spoke, voice flat. That's Mama Zhao, your mother's dowry maid. Old Jing was the old master's coachman. The rest, old retainers of the house. I lowered my head, muttering defensively, I knew that. He looked at me quietly. Under his gaze, my shoulders drooped. Fine, I admitted. I was injured before. I don't remember everything. Then, with forced brightness, I looked up and said eagerly, but I remember you. And our child too. Zhao Jiazong opened the door to the east room. Half his face was hidden in shadow when he said softly, I lied to you. We have no child. That boy is Mama Zhao's grandson, his name is Huayan. Something hollowed inside me. The room was the one I had lived in before. He had prepared it meticulously, fresh clothes folded neatly behind the screen, everything spotless and orderly, as though time had never passed. When he turned to leave, I caught the edge of the screen and leaned out. Then at least tell me this, was our wedding real? I remember it clearly. I was 15 when I married you. He caught a glimpse of my shoulder revealed beneath my robe and turned away at once, fists clenched. No humble man would dare climb so high. You must be mistaking it for that spring festival when you pretended to be a bride for fun. Avoiding my eyes, he lowered his lashes. Your fiancé is still in the capital. When his anger cools, you should return to him. The door closed softly. Impossible. Behind the screen, I slowly sank down, clutching my robe to my chest. The faint scent of grass and flowers lingered, unchanged after all these years. A sudden clarity pierced me. So this was it. I had lost someone, and by the time I wanted him back, it was already too late. Zhao Jiazong avoided me. Mama Zhao comforted me, saying he was busy with the family business. Since the second lord had become emperor, the old master and mistress had died in misfortune, and the family's river trade had fallen into neglect. Mama Zhao smoothed out a wedding robe she had once sewn for me inside. People scatter, child. Some dead, some sick, some simply gone. Everyone says the two family has glory now, she went on, her cloudy eyes soft with nostalgia. No need to risk lives on river barges anymore. But that fool Jiazong, he won't listen. He keeps the old boats, keeps the old servants. Won't let go of a single thing. The fading light glimmered over the frayed gold threads of the robe, shimmering like distant stars. A fragile gleam still lingered in Mama Zhao's dim eyes, a quiet fondness and sorrow interwoven. She smiled faintly. Everyone calls him a fool, sitting on a mountain of gold in the capital, yet clinging to this crippled life, feeding a house full of the old and weak. Hearing that, shame pricked through me. I curled my trembling fingers into my palm. It's my fault. I couldn't take care of anyone. If father and mother were still here, things wouldn't have turned out like this. Don't say that. Mama Zhao grasped my hand, patting my palm gently. You've always been a good child, never once had the arrogance of a noble lady. You were kind, even to the lowest servants. When the second lord took you to the capital and cut off all contact, we worried, but we also knew he must have done it for your sake. Now that we've learned you lost your memory after the accident, our hearts ache for you. How could we ever blame you for not coming home? But Zhao Jiazong blames me. I must have done something that hurt him deeply, so deeply that he now wants nothing more to do with me. He said everything between us was false. Yet in my memory, before the red candles, I had lifted the bridal veil and seen his eyes, bright with joy, so real it still burns within me. He said my heart belonged to Yao Zongxia. But whenever I saw traces of him in Yao Zongxia, all I felt was relief. It was a clear day, the weather fair. Crabapple and apricot blossoms fell like rain. I leaned by the window, listlessly catching a handful of petals, watching them scatter away with the wind. I couldn't hold them. I couldn't hold anything. Mama Zhao finally smoothed the last crease in the heavy wedding robe, half sewn by my mother, half finished by her failing eyes. She smiled faintly, both proud and sad. Your mother embroidered the first half. I finished what I could, though my eyesight failed me. It's still not worthy of you. But bringing it back to the capital with you will make a good keepsake. I took the robe, caressing the old silk reverently, and shook my head with a small smile. I'm not getting married. What? Mama Zhao froze. You mean the Yao family's young master treated you poorly? I toyed with the pearl prayer bead on my sleeve. He already has someone he loves. Her brows drew tight. She slammed her palm on the table. How dare he betray you? Didn't you save his life during the chaos? It was a story she'd told countless times, how I'd dragged Yao Zongxia from a pit of corpses in the middle of a snowstorm, ruining my health in the process, leaving my hands trembling each winter. Everyone said it. Everyone reminded me. He owed me his life. If he married me, it was gratitude. If he didn't, it was betrayal. 1,000 hands of obligation pressed down on him, forcing him to give up the woman he loved and bow before me. But, was that what I ever wanted? No one had ever asked me that. Our betrothal had been my uncle's decree. I had only grown close to Yao Zongxia because his eyes reminded me of Zhao Jiazong's. Even if I didn't know why I risked my life to save him, I was certain of one thing. The one I loved had always been Zhao Jiazong. Mama, I'm not sad. I lifted my chin, leaning against the windowsill, closing my eyes as the wind brushed my face. Because in my heart, I had already married someone good. Even if he refused to admit it. I forced myself to be strong again. No matter how cold Zhao Jiazong became, I clung to him without shame. A stubborn woman fears a persistent man, they say. But the opposite must be true as well. When he went to the docks to inspect silk and tea shipments, I followed. When he boarded ships to check the sails and planks, I followed still. He ignored me entirely, not even sparing a word. Under the blazing spring sun, my head spun slightly. I tugged at my collar, watching his back as he worked in his charcoal gray robe. Notice me a little, won't you, Zhao Jiazong? I muttered. He didn't answer. He merely leaned to test a loose railing, then crouched down and hammered it tight. Sweat glistened across his temples under the light. From the cabin emerged a dark-faced sailor, half his head bald from old burns. He grinned, raising a wine gourd. General, give the young lady some face, eh? She's been following you all afternoon, head over heels, that one. Might as well marry her already. General. I froze, staring at Zhao Jiazong. You served in the army. The man laughed heartily. Our general here used to be a commander of the 13th Frontier Battalion, guarding Weihu Pass. Even the Jin couldn't break through. A true hero, head held to the sky, feet on the earth. Marrying him would be no mistake, girl. Weihu Pass. Wasn't that near Yuzhou, the very place where my uncle had led his uprising? He had once told me that after my parents died, he'd brought me away for safety, fearing the rebels near Qianzhou. But he had never mentioned Zhao Jiazong was there too. Thud. A hammer struck the railing. Zhao Jiazong shot the man a sharp glare. Old Wu. Are you drunk out of your mind? He said coldly, she's a noblewoman, mind your tongue. Old Wu blinked, scratching his half-bald head. Ah, my mistake, young miss. Pretend you never heard that. He stumbled off, muttering under his breath. Zhao Jiazong turned away, voice steady but low. He's drunk. Likes to boast nonsense. I'm no general, never guarded any fortress. Old Wu pressed his lips together, wanting to speak but thinking better of it. With a sigh, he downed a full gulp of wine. Doubt churned in me, but before I could ask, a scrawny boy came running from the riverside, panting. General. Come quick. Old Jing's fighting again, at the tea house this time. Blood everywhere. Inside the cramped little shop, people were packed shoulder to shoulder. The stench of blood mixed with curses and cries. I rose on my toes, peering through the crowd. Old Jing, the same old man who'd threatened to storm the capital for me, was shirtless now, chest soaked in red, ribs jutting out like sharp blades. He gasped for breath, still shouting hoarsely, defiant even in pain. His thin, trembling finger pointed upward. No one knew whether he was accusing heaven or questioning the earth. A bunch of half-grown whelps who've never smelled blood, what do they know about war? The old man pounded his chest with both fists, as if he could claw his own heart out to demand justice. It was me. Me, an old wreck with one foot in the grave, my son dead, my daughter and son-in-law dead. I tore my shirt open so they could see how many scars cover this body from sword and spear. Every old soldier from Qianzhou bears wounds like these. But they don't believe us. They don't believe us. Inside, someone tried to calm him. Enough, old Jing. We know. We believe you. Old Jing broke down. What good does your belief do? Does the court believe? Does the second lord believe? Our own kin sits the throne, and even he doesn't believe. The veins on Zhao Jiazong's hand bulged as he gripped the door. With a sharp motion, he flung it open. Uncle Jing. Silence fell instantly. He stepped forward, blocking my view, his gaze cutting toward old Wu on the boat outside. His voice was low, commanding. Take her away. And not a word. Old Wu froze, then hiccuped and nodded quickly. The door shut firmly in front of me. I frowned and tried to follow. Zhao. But old Wu darted ahead, forcing a crooked grin. Young miss, this old man's shack stinks to high heaven, nothing worth seeing here. How about a walk through town, There's a festival for the spring god at the mountain shrine, lanterns, flowers, all that. He spoke rough but not rudely, guiding me aside with the back of his sleeve so his skin didn't touch mine. I don't want to go. I twisted to look back, worried about Uncle Jing, but old Wu's tone turned airy, pretending not to hear. Oh, you do want to go? Great. Let's make a day of it then. He was strong, didn't hurt me, but made struggling useless. As he led me away, he kept talking, coaxing, it's nothing. That old man does this every few days, gets worked up, shouts at ghosts. Old age, you know. Even your mama Zhao stopped bothering with him. See. She's not here now, is she? That means it's fine. His reassurance soothed me, just a little. Still, as we walked beneath weeping willows and blooming trees, my heart remained heavy. Even when the road opened onto the grand festival Mama Zhao had praised, I felt no joy. Maybe she had exaggerated, or maybe I'd simply grown up, seen too much splendor to find wonder in faded colors. The young men and women carrying the spring god's image had faces pale and dull, even the paper charms fluttering in the breeze looked sun-bleached, drained of life. But the flower garlands were fresh, glistening with water, newly plucked from the branches. Old Wu snatched a few with ease and offered them to me with a grin. When I was a boy, I used to grab twice as many. Now I've gone soft, can't outfight these brats anymore. Otherwise, they wouldn't get a single one, huh? I looked down at the garlands, sprigs of wintersweet, peach blossom, and wild apricot. Then at him. He had pulled his hat low, covering the burned scars on his scalp, the flush of wine had faded from his cheeks. And suddenly I realized, he was still young. A man in his prime, who should have been chasing honor and reward, not drifting aimlessly on an old, creaking boat. After a pause, I ventured, Brother Wu, men like you, soldiers who fought at the front, guarded the passes, shed blood for the empire, by the emperor's decree, you should all have been rewarded. Even if you didn't seek promotion, you were promised land and stipends, your names carved in stone. Why haven't I ever heard of that in Qianzhou? That edict was issued by my uncle when he first took the throne last year, I added quietly. Old Wu's expression changed. His jaw tightened, and for a moment, something heavy flickered in his eyes. Then he forced a laugh, scratching his neck. "Ah, you flatter me, miss. A grand lady like you calling me Brother Wu, that's already more honor than I deserve." He didn't believe me. Disheartened, I lowered my head, twirling an apricot blossom between my fingers. "I'm not that grand." "You're not." He chuckled. "Then no one in this world has the right to call themselves noble." I smiled faintly, shaking my head. The parade passed by, the wind shifted sharply, pushing me off balance. Old Wu scowled, catching the collar of the man who'd bumped into me. "Watch where you're going, brat. Can't you see someone standing here?" I waved my hand, about to tell him it was fine, until he saw the boy's face and his tone changed to pure irritation. "You again, little devil. Who've you been fighting with this time, you wild monkey? Go 3 days without a beating and you start itching for one, eh?" When I looked closer, I realized it was that same scrawny boy who had run to the riverside earlier to bring the news. He wore torn clothes, a ragged red sash tied carelessly at his waist. Lifting his thin, blood-streaked face, he spat out his words with a defiant sneer, knees bent, posture insolent. "What's it to you?" Old Wu frowned, wiping the boy's face roughly with his sleeve. Then his expression darkened. "Who were you fighting?" The boy, this little devil, snorted and repeated, "What's it to you?" Old Wu's face turned stormy. He pressed a hand on the boy's shoulder. "You went after those government thugs again, didn't you?" The boy jerked his chin up, the scars along his neck twisting into fierce lines. "So what if I did? They bullied old Jing, didn't they? That's the same as bullying the old soldiers of Qianzhou. You all hide your heads, scared of this and that, so I'll go. Killing a man's nothing new. I've seen worse than a few blades." Old Wu raised a hand in fury but couldn't bring himself to strike. Instead, he shouted, voice rough with anger. "Do you want to drag the general down with you? Did anyone die? Where did you fight?" The boy clenched his teeth, stubborn at first, but after a few solid blows from Old Wu, he grimaced and finally muttered through gritted teeth, pointing toward an alley behind the marketplace. "Who knows if he's dead or not?" Without another word, Old Wu bolted in that direction. Halfway there, he turned back, pointed at me, and barked to the boy. "Get her home safely." A gust of wind stirred, scattering the dry leaves around our feet. The boy and I stared at each other. His knees trembled. "Who are you?" Looking at him, a sudden thought flashed through my mind, this boy might be the key to everything. Bathed in sunlight, I smiled gently and called, "Little General." He blinked, stunned. The dried blood beneath his nose cracked as he twitched it. "What?" "1 bundle of roasted chicken, 2 skewers of candied hawthorn." That was all it took to bribe a little general. The boy ate with oily cheeks and puffed up mouth, chewing so fast his words came out garbled. Don't think bribing me means I'll spill anything about the general. I'm not some spy, you know." I folded my arms, walking backward along the bridge, amused. "I'm not after military secrets. I just want to understand him better. That's enough for me." He shot me a sideways glance, clicked his tongue, pretending to sound wise. "Little lady, don't fall too deep. Plenty of women fancy our general, but none have ever stirred his heart. He hasn't even spared a glance at anyone. No, why? Why?" I tilted my head. Finishing the last of his chicken, he wiped his mouth and waved toward the horizon. The sun was setting, the golden light spilling across the river, turning its surface red as molten copper. The wind grew colder, sweeping away the mountain mist until the thin curve of the moon appeared faint in the sky. "See that?" he said. "He wants to reach the moon, but the moonlight only falls into the gutter." He looked pleased with his poetic flourish, then spoke plainly. "To be honest, the general already has someone in his heart. Even if that woman's blind and went chasing after another man, he's stubborn. Once he's chosen someone, he never changes. Even if you were a fairy descended from heaven, you wouldn't move him. His words felt like a slap wrapped in silk. I rubbed my nose, forcing a weak smile. Your general's a good man. Maybe that woman had her own hardships. The boy gave a sharp laugh. Hardships, my ass. She and her whole family thought money could buy anything. Even if the general was strong enough to command armies, in their eyes, he was just something they'd bought off a slaver. People like her, dogs dressed as nobles. Pretend saints on the outside, rotten with pride within. Afraid that us lowly servants might stain their precious eyes. He spat to the side, hand trembling slightly as he gestured behind him. No matter how high her family sits now, I wouldn't give them a single glance. He was painfully thin, under the dim light, his long, pale face looked almost like a paper effigy from a funeral shop. Only his black eyes burned, the dying embers of a rage that refused to die. To people like them, he murmured, only those born noble count as human. The rest of us. We're just the steps they climb on, not even worth as much as pigs or dogs. I stood speechless, staring at him. The boy tugged the corner of his mouth into something like a smile, though his eyes didn't move. He gripped the sticky candied hawthorn tightly, sinking into his memories. You probably wouldn't believe it, he said at last. No one ever thought I'd end up killing men on the battlefield. I was weak as a reed, couldn't even lift a hoe. My parents scrimped and starved to send me to school, hoping I'd at least pass the county exams and make a decent life. In the last dynasty, scholars were prized while warriors were scorned, reading was the only path for the poor to rise. Yet for Little Devil, that road was far from smooth. He had passed the exam, top of the list, a prodigy of 13, already a shotsi. The future should have been dazzling. But when the results were posted, his name was gone, replaced by the magistrate's son. I knelt before the magistrate's gate all night, he said softly. I didn't understand. I passed. Why couldn't they even find my paper? His eyes blinked vacantly at the memory. I didn't dare go home. My parents were old, and all they'd ever wanted was to see me succeed. I thought my life was over. Better to drown and be done with it. He smiled then, a true smile at last, though it trembled. It was this very river. I'd climbed the railing, ready to jump, when the general caught me. He gave me another road. That road was the army. At the time, the rebel prince's forces were rising, war flames in every direction, an age of chaos that bred heroes. Little Devil didn't even know why he'd trusted that man, frail, almost delicate, with a face more beautiful than a woman's. But when I looked into his eyes, the boy murmured, gaze distant, everything became clear, as if even the ghosts fled from their light. The man had told him he was headed to Yuzhou. His young mistress was there. He would carve a path of blood and merit, steal her back from the world, and guard her side, even if it killed him. The sun was sinking, a faint violet haze hanging over the water. Hidden in the deepening dusk, my lips trembled. Little Devil sighed. Yuzhou. Yuzhou. A coward like me, who once couldn't kill a chicken, ended up cutting down men, Han and Jean alike. I lost count of how many brothers died. Later, I stopped asking new recruits their names. What's the point, when no one knows who'll still be breathing tomorrow? One day you share a meal, next day his head's rolling in the mud, blood raining down like a storm. He laughed bitterly. Kill, 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 endlessly. We fools from poor villages thought killing enough enemies would earn us a future, maybe even the right to live like real people. Princes and generals, are they born to it? He sneered. Empty words. All empty words. We Qianzhou soldiers fought hardest, yet our names were recorded least. Where did the credit go? To those pampered noble sons, scheming in silk tents, waving their feather fans, winning wars with ink and wine. And still they needed us to bleed for them. So they tossed our general a hollow title, commander of 1,000, just to keep him selling his life for their glory. The noble clans. My fingers trembled. A thought flashed, cold, bone deep. If that were all, he continued, if we'd lost our future but kept our lives, that would have been enough. But they wanted even that last bit of hope gone. His knuckles cracked as he clenched his fists, and the silence in his eyes erupted into fire. They're not human. To pile up more merit, they used refugees from the border as sacrifices. Those were our own people, unarmed, helpless, the ones we swore to protect. For the first time, real fear flickered in his gaze. He had killed countless men and never dreamed of it again. But that night, when he saw the severed heads, women, children, piled like firewood on a mat, the image would never leave his sleep. The general wouldn't stand for it. None of us could. We secretly reported to the Central Command, tried to expose those beasts. He drew in a breath that trembled. We almost died for it. The higher-ups found out and ordered a slaughter. 3,000 Xianzhou soldiers, less than 100 lived. Then came the new dynasty. We thought, maybe now, maybe justice. The new emperor was from Qizhou. We thought he'd remember. His voice cracked into a laugh that wasn't laughter. But we couldn't even leave Qianzhou. Those who betrayed us are officials now, high, untouchable. Crushing us would take less effort than stepping on an ant. Some disguised themselves as merchants, went to the capital to file charges. Didn't even make it out of the city before the guards framed them, threw them in prison, tortured them to death. Heaven's blind, but they see everything. He lifted his eyes to the mountains, shadows stretching long, swallowing the last light. Everywhere in Qianzhou, spies and informers. To survive, we learned to shut our mouths. The sun finally disappeared behind the ridges, the faint blue dusk spilling across his thin frame like a fragile touch of pity. Then even that light dissolved, swallowed by the black water beneath. Little Devil closed his eyes, inhaling the cold air deep, as if trying to exhale the burning rage caged in his chest. To live, he whispered. All we wanted was to live, with just a shred of dignity. Little Devil opened his eyes and tilted his head toward me, smiling faintly. Thanks for listening to me ramble. You're a good girl. If the general truly liked you, that'd be a fine thing. I shook my head and slipped into the shadows. If everything he'd said was true, then the puzzle finally made sense. Yao Zongxia had close ties with the Zhang family, Zhang the great general, who, alongside my uncle, once guarded Yuzhou. He was the commander of the frontier garrison at Weihu Pass. Yao Zongxia was indeed talented. His treatises on warfare were praised by scholars across the empire. But he had never once set foot on a battlefield. He had never even seen the borderlands. A nobleman's son, born to luxury and safety, yet at the founding of the new dynasty, he stood higher in reward than those weathered old commanders who'd bled for the empire. Why? Did my uncle know all this? Had he silently agreed to bury the truth, to trade the blood of those soldiers for peace, to avoid offending the great families who propped up the throne? If that was so, then what was the Tu family, but accomplices to the very evil that destroyed them? I dared not think further. If all that was true, then Zhao Jiazong had every right not merely to blame me, he should hate me. I had abandoned him, marrying the man who stole his youth, his comrades, his victories, and his very future. What right did I have to stay here? I couldn't even bear to meet Little Devil's kind eyes. Night fell. Lanterns flickered on the bridge, their trembling reflections drifting like fire over the dark water. I covered my face and began walking away. Hey, leaving already? Little Devil called after me. Where do you live? I haven't sent you home yet. I shook my head. He ran up beside me, bent down to look, and froze in alarm. You're crying. Why are you crying? He panicked, flailing his hands. Even if the general already has someone in his heart, you're beautiful enough to make any man waver. Maybe he'll fall for you yet. Just try harder. I'll help you if you want. I shook my head again, tears splashing from my chin, scattering like glass on stone. As I stepped off the bridge, I bumped into two men. A cool hand caught my shoulder. Little Devil stiffened at once, meeting the cold eyes of the man before us. "General," he stammered. Old Wu smacked the back of his head so hard it rang. "Are you trying to die? I told you to take her home, and you brought her here." Then he turned sharply, lowering his voice. "And you made her cry." "I didn't do anything." Little Devil protested, sulking. Zhao Jiazong's gaze rested on my face. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he lifted a hand, fingertips brushing the tears from my cheek, his voice soft. "What are you crying for?" I shook my head, pulling away, forcing my voice through the tightness in my throat. Don't bother about me." He didn't move. "If I don't, will you even know the way home?" My lashes trembled closed. My lips pressed together. Another tear slid free. I couldn't bear his voice, it would shatter me. There was no way home anymore. Only the road back to the capital, where I would confront my uncle, uncover the truth, and clear his name and the names of all the soldiers of Qianzhou. That was the debt I owed him. Above me came a faint sigh, then suddenly the ground slipped away beneath my feet. Startled, I opened my eyes. Zhao Jiazong had knelt on one knee and turned, lifting me onto his back. Old Wu and Little Devil stood frozen, mouths open. "Put me down," I whispered, pushing at him. But when I saw the unsteady way his crippled leg moved beneath him, my heart tightened, and I stopped struggling. Leaning against his back, breathing in the faint scent of bamboo and pine, I murmured. "Why do you still treat me kindly? I don't deserve it." He said nothing. For a long time, so long I thought he would never speak again, his voice finally rose, quiet and steady, carrying that same warmth I remembered from another life. "Because I believe, you must have your reasons." I bit my lip. "But I don't remember them." He hitched me a little higher, holding me more firmly. "It's fine. I'll remember for the both of us." Moonlight streamed through a break in the clouds, falling across our path. Even without lanterns, as long as someone remembered the way home, the road ahead could still be found. I couldn't hold back anymore. My face pressed against his shoulder, and I wept. That night, I thought I would lie awake in torment. But after Mama Zhao coaxed me into drinking a bowl of sweet soup, I slept deeply. Until sunlight spilled through the windows. When I woke, mist veiled the garden. Rain fell in a fine drizzle. In the courtyard below, an old woman swept petals into neat piles. There was no one else in sight. Thinking of the trouble Little Devil's fight had caused, I remembered old Wu's warning that it might bring disaster upon Zhao Jiazong. I searched the courtyard restlessly, but he was nowhere to be found, and unease rose sharp in my chest. I hurried to the kitchen and asked the old woman there. "Do you know where Zhao Jiazong went?" She cupped a hand to her ear, hard of hearing, listening for a long while before smiling kindly. "Don't fret, elder sister Ai. The master and mistress will be back on the boat soon. They'll bring you trinkets, necklaces, hairpins, all the things you like." Frustrated, I gestured with my hands. "No, not them, Zhao Jiazong, tall, lean, the handsome one." "Ah, him," she said, eyes lighting with sudden recognition. Glancing toward the study, she chuckled. "Where else would he be? Probably copying your essays again. You always bully that poor boy." Her clouded eyes couldn't tell past from present, she only remembered the promise someone had made, to watch over me, always. She tugged at my sleeve. "Don't go out. There are kidnappers about." My heart twisted with impatience. I pulled free and pushed her gently under the eaves. "Stay inside, I'll be right back." Lifting my skirts, I splashed through puddles, petals scattering beneath my feet. "Elder sister Ai." Her trembling voice called after me, fading in the rain. Mist and drizzle veiled the road, and many people were moving in the same direction. A chill of dread spread through me. My heartbeat grew wild. By the time I reached the magistrate's office, a dense crowd had filled the square. The prefect sat high beneath a broad plaque, his presence severe, authority radiating even in silence. Bang! The wooden ruler struck the desk. Someone was dragged before the bench. Little devil. One person acts, one person bears it. He shouted, standing straight. We didn't fight out of spite. We fought because the yamen is rotten, full of leeches who feed on the empire's silver while preying on the common folk. Yesterday I struck for the people, nothing more. The three beaten clerks, faces swollen and bruised, spat back with fury. Who do you think you are, you rat-spawned bastard? You're not fit to crawl before a magistrate. I may be a rat, he said, eyes flashing, but I made you rats squeal for your mothers, so what does that make you? The crowd erupted with laughter. I pushed through the bodies until I saw Zhao Jiazong standing apart, brow furrowed. His clothes were plain gray, worn at the cuffs, yet his calm, finely cut features drew stares. Some young wives near him hid their smiles behind handkerchiefs, whispering. A sharp hiss silenced the noise. The hearing began. I knew that court runners weren't true officials, they were hired from common stock, so by law, at worst little devil should face flogging or a fine, nothing fatal. But the tense faces of the old Qianzhou soldiers around Zhao Jiazong told another story. On the dais, the prefect's features blurred in the dim light, only the flutter of his winged hat visible. You claim this was your own act, his voice was cold, deliberate, yet evidence says otherwise. You struck on behalf of a man who dared slander his majesty, a commoner who boasted of false military deeds. A troublemaker, stirring discord. His fingers tapped the desk, his tone dropped to ice. The empire has stood barely a year. Qianzhou borders the frontier, unrest lingers, and the genes still prowl beyond the passes. Yet creatures like you spread chaos, sowing distrust between the crown and its people. Should I not suspect treason? The words hit like stones. Treason. My breath caught. They meant to accuse them of collusion with the enemy. I looked toward Zhao Jiazong. He and the others, old Wu among them, were trembling with fury. He stopped them with a swift motion, expression unreadable, but I saw his right hand at his side clenching something so hard that blood seeped through his fingers. On the dais, the prefect demanded a confession, who had ordered the attack. Little devil bit down hard, jaw set. He said nothing. Rebel scum. The prefect waved a hand. Use the rod. 100 strokes. They didn't even need a torturer, random blows from bamboo staves could already kill. Crash. A bench was dragged out. 2 clerks forced him face down. The first strike landed across his back. A muffled groan. A mouthful of blood spilled silently down his chin. He held on, unwilling to implicate anyone. But those watching could not. Veins bulged across old Wu's forehead. He shoved through the guards and shouted, voice breaking. You want a culprit? Fine. I'm the spy. Arrest me, behead me, tear me to pieces, I'll take it all. Leave the rest out of this. The prefect sipped his tea, smiling faintly, shaking his head. You. His gaze was sharp as glass. No, you lack the nerve for treason. I hear you trade on the river. Tell me, who is your patron? The hall fell silent. Every eye turned, one after another, to Zhao Jiazong. Thunder rolled overhead. Rain began to fall. He lifted his face to the sky, almost smiling. Water streamed down his pale, composed features, washing away the blood on his hand. At last, he let go of what he held, a jade pendant shaped like a fish biting a flowering branch, its crimson stain gleaming against the drab of his robe, the lone point of color in a world gone gray. Then he stepped forward, straight-backed as pine. Zhao Jiazong bowed deeply. This humble man, Zhao Jiazong, pays respect to your excellency. Then he knelt. And knelt still. Time stretched thin as silk, he did not rise. A tremor passed through me. General. Old Wu and Little Devil cried hoarsely, their eyes red. Why kneel before this dog of an official? Stand up. Please, stand up. We don't need your protection. Whatever our crimes, we'll bear them ourselves. Zhao Jiazong's gaze was vacant on the floor. His voice was low. What crimes could you possibly bear? The prefect's brows arched with interest. Oh. You are a general, then, Zhao Jiazong. I am not, he answered quietly. Then by your logic, if they are innocent, you are the guilty one, the prefect said. Yes, Zhao Jiazong replied, lifting his head. This humble man is guilty. The prefect's lips curved, but his triumph froze as Zhao's voice, calm and resonant, filled the hall. My guilt lies in this, that for the sake of a peaceful court, I hid the truth, allowed the bones of 3,000 Qianzhou soldiers to be trampled underfoot by traitors. A murmur rippled through the crowd. The prefect's expression darkened. You. Zhao continued, steady as stone. My guilt lies in knowing my own powerlessness, yet still leading them forward, causing 3,000 soldiers to lose their names, their honors, their lives. They died in foreign dust like exiled dogs, unable even to cry out their grievances. Bang! The prefect slammed his wooden block onto the desk. Silence. What nonsense are you spewing? Qianzhou never had such a garrison. He barked. The men under General Zheng's banner all received rewards, their names recorded in the annals. You dare invent lies. He sneered. You claim you fought the Jin, resisted the rebel prince. Laughable. What proof have you? Zhao braced himself on one knee, forcing himself upright. He tugged down old Wu's collar. Gasps rippled through the hall, the old soldier's neck and chest bore hideous burn scars. In the summer of the 27th year of Shengtong, Zhao said evenly. The Jin attacked Weihu Pass. For 10 days, they besieged us from both flanks. The fort was nearly lost. Zhang Wu led 50 men into the enemy camp to burn their supplies, saving us all. The credit was recorded under the name of the adopted son of Minister of Internal Affairs, He Luan, now governor of Xia Prefecture. Old Wu turned aside, his jaw trembling, grief and shame choking him. In the spring of the 28th year, Zhao went on. The rebel prince crossed the frozen river with the Jin, capturing 13 border cities. Nearly all defenders fell. The great general ordered the Qianzhou battalion to fight to the death. They tore open the enemy's flank so the border folk could escape. The merit was recorded under the name of the son of Minister of Revenue, Xia Hanwen. He pulled down Little Devil's sleeve, beneath it ran a deep, jagged sword scar, 2 knuckles long, rough and raised. 1 inch deeper, he'd be dead, Zhao said softly. And that glory was sold to the Xie family. The crowd began to stir, doubt, realization, outrage blending in the air. His clear, resonant voice carried through the entire court. In the winter of the 29th year, he continued. Old Jing and 80 wounded soldiers crawled through the Jin's water tunnels to strike from within. In the spring of the 30th, 1,826 Qianzhou men did not die on the battlefield, they died on the road home. Even their families could not find their bodies. Morning frost over wild grass. Frozen rivers under night sky. No road home. No one to hear them. Silence fell, thick, suffocating. Then a wail shattered it. So that's how my son died. They said he deserted, beheaded by the Jin. Lies, all lies. One cry became dozens, then hundreds. Families of the fallen surged forward, voices cracking, begging for truth. Even the guards' clubs couldn't hold them back. Grief and fury exploded across the prefecture hall. Silence. The prefect's wooden block struck again, splitting in half, falling to the floor. he panted, clutching his chest, then slumped back in his seat. Rebels, a den of rebels. He gulped his cold tea, breath ragged, regaining composure by force. Stroking his beard, his eyes gleamed darkly. So this is your proof. Words and scars. His voice turned sharp. You dare overturn the deeds of noble families with gossip and wounds. Zhao Jiazong, I've known you for years. You are a clever man, how have you become so foolish? Zhao's face was calm. He folded his hands and bowed low. Your Excellency has said it well, if it is slander against the court, then let all blame fall upon me alone. Everything was done by my hand. The others were misled, deceived, nothing more. Understanding struck me like lightning. He knew he could never fight the powers above. So he would trade his life for one chance, to speak the truth aloud, to carve a single path of survival for the old soldiers of Qianzhou. General. Old Wu and Little Devil stared at him, horror dawning in their eyes. They had once fought side by side, brothers in arms who'd bled and starved together. How could they possibly watch him shoulder everything alone? Before long, one man in the crowd, another veteran, stepped forward. Then a second. Then a third. Soon the entire hall was filled with old soldiers, their faces weathered and resolute. If death is what you want, one said quietly, then kill us all together. They had endured humiliation, hoping one day to reclaim justice for the souls of their fallen comrades. But justice had proved nothing more than ink on parchment, carved into cold stone, recited from the lips of silk-robed nobles. It pressed down upon their backs like mountains, crushing them until they could no longer breathe, until silence became habit, and submission their only refuge. This was justice. Not the justice of righteousness, but the justice of rank and privilege. The prefect burst out laughing. Ah, so now you'd coerce the court. Coerce me. With a sharp sweep of his crimson sleeve, he turned toward the gathered crowd outside. Is there anyone else? He called mockingly. Who among you dares vouch for them? Come out. Let's see how many wish to share their fate. The people said nothing. No one left. No one spoke. I took a step forward. A trembling hand caught my sleeve, old Madame Zhao's. Tears streaked her clouded eyes as she shook her head. I pressed her wrinkled hand gently. He had always protected me. I remembered, when we were children, I once led our playmates to leave him behind in a cave for sport. Years later, when slavers came, I ran first, leaving him injured. On the battlefield, I had known he was stationed in Yuzhou, yet I avoided him, chasing instead after Yao Zongxia. He'd still come to find me, secretly bringing me trinkets, sweets, little fineries bought with saved coins. I had been ashamed of him then, refused to see him. In the 30th year of Shengtong, when he and his soldiers barely escaped the blades of their own countrymen, I knew nothing. Because I was marching the other way, to save Yao Zongxia. And still, he had never blamed me. He only said, you had your own burdens to bear. Madame Zhao's tears blurred before me. I lowered my head and whispered. Mama, I've abandoned him too many times already. This time, I won't. This time, I would give up everything. Only to return him the justice he deserved. I released her hand and walked forward. You. The prefect frowned at me, then turned his gaze to Zhao Jiazong, who had instinctively stepped closer, shielding me. A derisive laugh escaped him. So this is what it is, a girl lovesick over her man. Yuan Ai, go back. Zhao hissed, panic in his voice. I stood firm, lifting my chin. He is not my lover, I said clearly. My voice echoed through the hall. He is my betrothed. Zhao Jiazong's hand faltered, his fingers slowly loosened. I went on, calm and steady. Your Excellency, it is only right for a wife to speak on behalf of her husband. The prefect leaned back, sneering. Very well. Then I shall hear how you defend a traitor to the throne. I stepped up to the front. You accuse them of colluding with the enemy, I said. Do you have proof? Proof. His tone turned smug. They spread seditious talk in the marketplace, witnesses heard them slander the court. They injured officers, the wounds are proof enough. And your husband has already confessed to inciting them. What further proof do you need? I bowed slightly. Yet earlier, Your Excellency said the talk of battlefield injustice was mere idle chatter, that their scars could not be evidence of truth. Now, you say the gossip you heard, the wounds you saw, these count as proof. Forgive my ignorance, but is the law of our empire so written, that the words of the people are dismissed, yet the words of the prefect alone are law? A few voices rose from the crowd. Well said. Such courage. Little Devil, still forced on his knees, gaped at me as though seeing a ghost. The prefect's face darkened. Foolish woman. What do you know of law and order? He barked. You see an official and do not kneel. I folded my hands behind my back, spine straight, and smiled faintly. You lack the authority to make me kneel. Impudent. The prefect slammed the desk, roaring, Guards. Seize her, make her kneel. Zhao Jiazong immediately stepped before me. Old Wu followed. One by one, the veterans of Qianzhou moved forward, forming a living wall between me and the guards. You would rebel. The prefect spat, trembling with rage. His hand lifted high to give the order. But the side curtain suddenly lifted. A shrill, nasal voice rang out. Rebel against whom, exactly? Does His Excellency now see himself as the Empire? Two figures emerged from behind the curtain. At their head was a eunuch in a round-collared robe embroidered with chrysanthemums, eyes narrow and mocking. The prefect's hand froze midair. He blanched, stumbling down from the dais in panic to greet them. Oh my, eunuch Hua. Just a few petty commoners, how could they trouble you to come in person? In an instant, the prefect's face transformed from rage to flattery. He turned hastily toward the dignified man standing behind the eunuch and bowed low. Young Marquis. I was blocked by the crowd and couldn't see or hear clearly. Then, parting through the towering men like a drifting fragrance of sandalwood, an old eunuch with skin pale as jade hurried straight toward me. He clasped my sleeve with delicate care, his smile gentle yet reproachful. Aze, my little master. You've been sulking and ran away from His Majesty, have you had your fun yet? Two voices rose in shock. Little master. One came from Little Devil, frozen like a wooden puppet. The other, from the prefect, thunderstruck. I looked properly at the eunuch's face, uneasy, and withdrew my hand. Eunuch Hua, why are you here? He smiled faintly, stepping aside. Not just me, child. Look, the young Marquis himself has come to take you home. Not far away stood Yao Zongxia. His gaze was complex, lingering a moment on Zhao Jiazong beside me. His jaw tightened, then he started forward, but I quickly turned my eyes away and grasped Zhao's hand. His lashes quivered faintly, eyes downcast. Yao Zongxia stopped in his tracks. I drew a breath and said, Eunuch Hua, you must have heard. These veterans of Qianzhou have suffered grievous injustice, yet they're denied even a chance to prove their innocence. I lifted my voice. The words and conduct of officials reflect the face of His Majesty himself. If they act with ignorance and false accusation, it is the throne's honor that's tarnished, and the people's hearts that turn cold. The prefect's complexion drained white. Eunuch Hua cast him a sidelong glance, then looked toward the restless but restrained crowd outside. Finally, he nodded. Investigate, he said softly. Thoroughly. Then, turning back to the prefect, his tone grew mild yet heavy. Lordly, the duty of a prefecture court is to let the people voice their grievances. Why so hasty, so eager to label every unrest as treason? His Majesty's reign ushers an age of peace. The sycophants and traitors of the past have already met their fate. The realm is stable now, loyal officials should understand their place. Sweat poured down the prefect's forehead. He bowed repeatedly. Yes, yes, this humble servant understands. Entirely understands. Yet even as he stammered, his eyes flickered toward Yao Zongxia, who only stared blankly at me, watching the way I still held Zhao Jiazong's hand, his face unreadable. I looked at eunuch Hua in silent admiration. Truly, the old eunuch of two reigns, within a few words, he had calmed the people, the soldiers, and the chaos itself. A case that should have ended in bloodshed now bought time. At least, Zhao Jiazong and his brothers had earned a reprieve. A case accusing officials of falsifying military merit must, by law, pass through every level of court, jointly reviewed by the 3 judicial offices, and in the end judged by my own uncle, the emperor. Even as one of royal blood, though I could appear before the throne directly, my involvement here would stain their innocence, turn their truth into a tale of favoritism. Eunuch Hua understood perfectly. His eyes met mine, a silent signal, no matter how much your heart aches, you cannot go with him now. But I turned toward Zhao Jiazong. My fear rose like a tide. Then his hand closed gently over mine. That familiar smile, calm, tender as moonlight. That's enough, he whispered. Thank you. He slowly let go, as if pushing me out of the mire, back toward the silken world that was supposed to be mine. Yuan Ai, he said softly. Go home. Behind him, the old soldiers of Qianzhou smiled, weary but serene. Go now, Yuan Ai. You've done enough. Yao Zongxia, face taut and cold, seized my wrist. Come. Let's go. Dazed, I let him pull me away. The crowd parted in silence, their eyes following, not out of scorn, but quiet respect. I had spoken for them, and they would remember. Such were the people of our empire, weathered by hardship, yet steadfast in their decency. The official barge bound for the capital had long been readied. Eunuch Hua, aware of how I'd delayed these past days, said gently, at dawn tomorrow, we must set sail. His Majesty awaits you at court. I rested my head on my arm, gazing out the window. The courtyard had crabapple trees like those back home. Rain drizzled from a gray sky, petals falling and shattering like broken jade. Behind me came a sigh. Eunuch Hua placed a thicker cloak over my shoulders, hesitated, then fell silent. I didn't turn around. My voice was quiet. Don't persuade me, I know. Staying changes nothing. You've said it will be investigated, that means it's already my uncle's will. They'll be safe. I just... 1,000 thoughts collapsed into one. I just feel so heavy here. I lowered my eyes, fingers brushing a rain-soaked petal. You don't understand. I've wronged him, too many times. I want to make it right, but I can't. I want to have him, but he doesn't want me. Even my memories of him are fading. I can't even remember enough to apologize properly. For a long while, silence. Then Eunuch Hua sighed and smiled with weary kindness. In truth, this servant knows a little. About that year, you never betrayed anyone. It was fate. I turned sharply. You know. He nodded gravely, stepping toward the window. His eyes followed the faint outline of mountains lost in mist. In those days, the realm was chaos. To the east, the rebel prince, to the north, the Jin, to the southwest, the tribal uprisings. His Majesty was stretched thin, fighting on every front. When news came that the Duke and Duchess of Ziyu met misfortune on the river, His Majesty had no choice but to send you secretly to Yuzhou, to be protected under General Zhang's command. When chaos swept the land, Yuzhou had become a refuge for the noble families fleeing the capital. Every step outside risked treading upon the hem of a marquis or a minister, their retinues and guards crowded every street. It was, in theory, the safest place in the realm. Yet my younger self had insisted on returning to Qianzhou, saying foolishly that my nursemaids and the foster husband were still there, and that I must go back to protect them. Eunuch Hua smiled faintly, nostalgia shadowing his eyes. Even servants like us understood, Qianzhou, right by the border, was already abandoned. The old, the weak, the sick, His Majesty had given them up. As for that foster husband, it was but a childish jest among the elders, never meant to be real. The smile faded from his lips, his tone turned solemn. Before you left, His Majesty warned us all, you were royal blood, born of gold and jade. You were never to be associated with those people again. My brows drew together. So when some penniless soldier from Qianzhou came seeking you, he continued quietly. The gatekeepers either concealed it or lied, saying you'd gone visiting some noble lady. You'd always disliked those spoiled young heirs who'd never known suffering, so you refused them every time. A chill crept down my spine. My voice was cold. And afterward? Eunuch Hua sighed. Afterward, it was fate. For 4 years, they kept you ignorant. Then, in the 30th year of Xingtong, word reached Yuzhou that Zhao Jiazong was at Weihu Pass, and that he was in grave peril. You ignored every warning, rode alone straight to the command camp of General Zhang. But by ill fortune, the Jin spies struck that very night. The vanguard was ambushed, none survived. The general led the rescue, but the few battered soldiers left behind in the camp saw you and, believing the rumors that His Majesty would wed the Yao family, thought you'd come seeking the young marquis. So they pointed you toward the forward army. My body went rigid. Through the veil of rain outside the window, Eunuch Hua looked at me with quiet pity. His voice faded into a blur. Then, in that gray silence, the pounding of my heart pulled me backward. To the first snowfall of that cursed spring. The horse beneath me thundered through the storm, hooves slicing through slush. Snow crusted my lashes, I fell, rolled, tore free of the hands that tried to hold me back, and flung myself into the burial pit where the bodies were heaped like broken dolls. Zhao Jiazong. Zhao Jiazong, where are you? But he was not there. He was far away, in the forests beyond the pass. Leading 3,000 soldiers still clinging to life, crawling on shattered legs through blood and ice. Even crippled, he dragged himself onward, just to bring his brothers home. I had searched the wrong place. Later, they told me I'd turned back too late. The snowstorm swallowed me whole. I fell from the cliff. When they found me, I remembered nothing. Eunuch Hua's voice softened. My lady, fate mocks us all. You and he were never destined. I laughed quietly, tears burning behind my eyes. Fate, I echoed bitterly. If you had told me sooner, would it still have come to this? Then my mind turned cold. All those falsified war merits, my uncle must have known. He just watched. Eunuch Hua did not deny it. He spoke gently, as though soothing a child. His Majesty needed the support of the great clans. The noble houses of the former dynasty still held deep roots. Common-born men were despised, cast aside. The Tu family was never among the aristocracy. To keep the throne, His Majesty had to win their favor. Governing a realm is no easy task. One cannot offend the powers that uphold it. I smiled faintly, sharp as frost. And now, this investigation, doesn't it offend them? He opened his mouth, but I answered for him. No. Because he no longer needs them. Since ancient times, no ruler has ever spared his founding lords forever. Every emperor strikes the mountain to remind the tigers who rules it. The rebellion had already broken the clan's pride. Though they still filled half the court, the new nobles of humble birth now stood among them. My uncle had laid this board long ago, setting the first stone in Qianzhou, waiting for the right moment to ignite it, to shake the mighty houses to their bones. Otherwise, with their cunning, they'd never have allowed a threat like Zhao Jiazong to live. When the realization settled, my heart felt strangely hollow. Should I feel relieved that he had spared the old soldiers' lives? Or bitter, knowing the common people and their blood were merely pieces in his game? Seeing my silence, Eunuch Hua's voice softened again. Do not resent his majesty, my lady. Since you left, he's been restless. He told this servant more than once. Back then, I was powerless. I couldn't protect my sister. Now that I hold the throne, I will protect her daughter at any cost. He paused, bowing slightly. You are his only kin. Forcing you to marry into the Yao family, he only wished for you to live in wealth and safety before his eyes. At the mention of my mother, my lashes trembled. A weak smile touched my lips. Soon, my uncle will take a queen. He'll have a wife, children, other family. I won't be the only one. Then, isn't Princess Baocheng of the Zhang family practically his daughter as well? I murmured suddenly. Eunuch Hua shook his head. General Zhang sought favor with the noble clans and overstepped imperial authority. His Majesty intends to curb their arrogance, and besides, the Zhangs are entangled in the falsified military merit case. But he still granted the younger Zhang girl a princess title. He looked away, voice lowering. Late last year, envoys from Jin came seeking peace. They asked for a marriage alliance. Outside, wind and rain howled. Swallows wheeled through black clouds. The second daughter of the Zhang family is but a concubine's child, unloved. Such girls are often sacrificed between throne and clan. She's always said you stole everything that was hers. So it wasn't only love I had taken from her, but youth itself, bartered away to a desolate foreign land. She truly must go then. I whispered. Then, a thought struck me. My head snapped up, eyes bright. But Yao Zongxia broke our engagement. He'll surely marry her. If he does, she won't have to go at all. I turned to Eunuch Hua, half desperate. And besides, after how we crushed the Jin a few years ago, refusing this marriage shouldn't be impossible, right? This marriage alliance is a matter of statecraft, Eunuch Hua said quietly. A path to peace, not war, a long-term gain for both realms. Once a sovereign gives his word, it cannot be taken back. He looked at me with weary pity. Then, as if remembering something, his gaze shifted past me to the window. His voice softened. Besides, who told you the young Marquis has broken the engagement? My heart skipped a beat. He hasn't. He knelt outside the Hall of Governance for 2 whole hours, Eunuch Hua murmured, begging His Majesty not to annul it. What? I turned sharply. Outside, beneath the crab-apple tree, fine rain shimmered like threads of silver. His white robe clung to his body, soaked through, yet he stood unmoving, as if rooted there for ages. You lied to me. I stormed out, pointing straight at him. Are you ill? The sudden outburst startled Yao Zongxia, his brows knitted tightly. At the mention of our betrothal, his expression turned awkward, his lips pressing into a line. He exhaled sharply and turned his head aside. I did it for you, he said stiffly. Do you know what kind of situation you were in then? If I had abandoned you, the whole court would have mocked you. His tone held grievance rather than guilt, his eyes full of reproach. What, are you blaming me now? I stared at him, dumbfounded. You never even liked me. He clenched his jaw. Does that matter? His voice was hard. Our engagement was arranged back in Yuzhou. I had no other woman and, well, you're pleasing enough to the eye. Marriage between our families is fitting. I laughed coldly. And the Zhang family's second daughter. Don't you like her? He stiffened, eyes flashing. What nonsense is that? He bit out each word. She grew up in my household, my mother treated her like a younger sister. Ask anyone among the gentry in the capital, they all know that. I blinked. Indeed, back then I'd never cared to ask. Competing for a man's affection had never interested me. He went on, frustrated, you're still angry about the polo match, aren't you? I told you, it wasn't intentional. My horse lost control, that's all. It had nothing to do with her. I waved a hand, exhausted. That's long past. What matters now is clearing the Qianzhou soldiers' names, then asking my uncle to dissolve our engagement. He frowned sharply. Dissolve what? I don't care whether you have feelings or not, I said flatly. But I do. I turned to leave, intent on finding Zhao Jiazong, to tell him everything, that I'd never abandoned him, that I wanted to marry him properly this time. But before I could take 2 steps, my wrist was seized in a crushing grip. Say your piece, then walk away. It's night, where do you think you're going? It's none of your concern. I tried to pull free. His voice turned icy. If you go to that crippled soldier, I'll make sure he never clears that case. I froze. You. He yanked me back, towering over me, his tone edged with fury. You are my fiancé. Yet you dare hold hands in the street with some lame beggar. I've tolerated you long enough. Rage flared through me. I shoved him hard. It's I who've tolerated you. I shouted. Have you no shame? Did you not hear how he's been wronged? For all you know, your own family's false merits might be tied to it. His hand tightened painfully on my wrist. His breath came harsh and uneven, and for the first time his eyes trembled. So now you lump me with those corrupt officials. He whispered hoarsely. If you remember so much, why not remember me? He caught my hand, pressing it to his chest before I could resist. I struggled, but he forced me to look. Beneath the disheveled collar, his collarbone gleamed pale, and across it, scars ran thick as vines. The deepest lay just above his heart. They have scars, do you think I don't? His voice was low, shaking. He's wounded, and you pity him. What about me? You dug me out of a pit of corpses yourself. If I were one of those who stole others' glory, would I have nearly died on that battlefield? Did you think I lay there for amusement? I stared at the scars, speechless. Guilt pricked sharp and cold. Perhaps I had judged him too harshly. I was wrong, I said softly. He gave a short, bitter laugh. Too late. I'll remember. It's only because you provoke me. I snapped back. Forget it, fix your clothes, you look ridiculous. He stared at me for a long moment before releasing me, pulling his robe closed with slow, deliberate hands. His voice dripped with irony. So you do know what propriety means, after defending another man more fiercely than your own betrothed. I sighed. He is my betrothed. From childhood. If anything, I was meant to marry him. Protecting him isn't wrong. Before his face could darken further, I went on quickly. To be honest, whether in Yuzhou or after I lost my memory, the only reason I treated you kindly was because you reminded me of him. I saved you, and then I mistook you for his shadow. You, meanwhile, have never felt anything for me. So let's end it cleanly. Once we return, we'll dissolve the engagement. Then neither of us owes the other a thing. The moment my words fell, his expression flickered, anger, disbelief, wounded pride, all chasing each other across his face. Then his jaw clenched, and he spat out 2 words through his teeth. In your dreams. I blinked, stunned. For a heartbeat I thought his outrage came from shame, from wounded dignity, and asked in confusion. What are you angry for? People call you a gentleman, don't they? A true gentleman values righteousness. Leaving justice for the soldiers of Qianzhou, wouldn't that be a virtuous deed? But before I could finish, he seized me suddenly, pulled me hard against his chest, and in the next breath, lifted me off my feet. The world spun. Bang. The door slammed shut behind us. His voice dropped to a low, icy growl. I never said I was a gentleman. The bolt slid into place. I kicked and pounded the door furiously. Yao Zongxia. You bastard. The noise must have shaken the whole corridor, for Yuna Hua came running, flustered beyond measure. My 2 young ancestors, please, not another quarrel. I called out to him to open the door, but before he could move, Yao's cold voice cut through the storm outside. Whoever touches that latch is defying me. The rain drummed on the roof all night, relentless. The door never opened. By dawn, the ship had already set sail for the capital. I leaned on the railing, scowling at the gray banks sliding past, and imagined punching Yao Zongxia in the face 100 times. The culprit himself sat leisurely inside, plucking at a zither as though the world were silent, letting the taut strings hum one by one. Twang, twang, twang. Each note stabbing at my nerves. Can you stop tuning that damned thing? I snapped. It's driving me mad. He didn't even lift his eyes. Eunuch Hua tried to soothe us in his gentle voice, but Yao spoke over him, lazy and cutting. Let her be. She's only sulking because no one came to see her off. Clearly, she doesn't matter to him, so she vents her temper on the easiest target. Please, my lord, Eunuch Hua sighed, clutching his head. A noble man shouldn't argue with a lady. I turned away to hide the fury in my face, and froze. Far on the misty shore, a lone figure stumbled toward the riverbank. My heart leapt. I waved frantically, grinning with triumphant delight. Who says he doesn't care about me? I tossed over my shoulder at Yao. Through the fog, Zhao Jiazong's frail silhouette swayed, unsteady, slipping, nearly falling into the water before someone caught him back. I cupped my hands around my mouth and shouted with all my strength. Don't worry. I'll come back for you. I didn't know if he heard. The mist thickened, blue-gray and soft, swallowing the faint outline of his robe until it melted into the river's haze, gone, as if a single gust might scatter him to nothing. Then the ship lurched, turning around a bend, and even the shore disappeared from sight. I stood frozen, then slowly turned back, straight into Yao Zongxia's dark, stormy gaze. He gave a short, cold snort, flung the zither aside, and stalked into the cabin. The curtain fell behind him with a loud thud. Another tantrum, I muttered, rolling my eyes toward the heavens. So the days drifted by, 10, 12 perhaps, down the river and through endless arguments, 3 days for a small quarrel, 5 for a great one. Eunuch Hua sighed so much he claimed his hair had gone half white from despair. At last, in mid-April, our ship reached the capital. It was the season of soft winds and green willows, when even the air smelled of tender spring. Yet the imperial court was no garden of peace, it buzzed like a hive overturned. The Qianzhou case had reached the emperor's desk. The capital roiled like a market square, voices shouting, spittle flying, factions splitting and joining anew. Some struck, some schemed, and the streets outside the palace gates trembled with rumor. And my uncle, the emperor, sat serene upon the dragon throne, eyes half closed, saying nothing. That was exactly what he wanted. The louder the storm, the better. Division and suspicion, loyal ministers branded as traitors, traitors praised as loyal. With a single word, he could upend them all. When the fire grew high enough, he would rebuild the court from its ashes. Even the once proud eunuch of 2 reigns, Grand Chamberlain Xia, tried to save himself, abandoning his adopted son, begging to retire to the southern mausoleum fields to grow vegetables. My uncle smiled faintly and told him to stay. The man collapsed, knocking his forehead against the tiles until the blood seeped between the cracks. My uncle understood everything, of course. No matter how deep the old family's roots ran, no matter how violently they flailed, the truth was simple. In the end, there was only one will that ruled the empire. To remain was to die. To use the lowly to break the mighty. To pit shame against pride. That was the art of emperors. The deep voice from behind the imperial desk broke the stillness. So you've been standing there since dawn, just to daydream. I jolted back to myself and smiled hastily. My uncle, the emperor, paused in his writing, glancing at me sidelong. Is this palace held up by you alone? Come here, grind the ink. Yes, your majesty. I took up the Huizhou inkstick, setting it to the white jade inkstone. Before I could decide how to speak, he snorted softly. What, lost your tongue now? A trip to Qianzhou and you've learned a few tricks of silence too. I bit my lip. Words crowded my chest, yet none seemed right. My hand brushed my nose unconsciously. He caught the motion, sighed, and muttered under his breath. Still a child. Always a child. He flicked his sleeve, leaving a casual mark of ink on the page. The familiar motion eased something tight inside me. Smiling, I slipped down to sit at his feet, tugging at the hem of his dragon robe. Uncle. His answer was calm but firm. Stop thinking about breaking that engagement. I froze, eyes lifting toward him. Then, the Qianzhou case. He lowered his gaze, unreadable. The 3 judicial offices are already examining it. The world is watching. What are you anxious for? I only fear something unforeseen, I said earnestly. Those men slaughtered their own people for stolen merit. They can twist black to white. If even one of them escapes, I could never be at peace. He raised a brow and shook his head. When the water is too clear, no fish remain. If I investigate to the bone as you wish, there will be few left standing in court. But uncle is a wise ruler, I countered softly, a just one. He tilted his head, a faint smile tugging his lips. Am I? I studied him carefully, the brows so like my mother's, the small mole upon the bridge of his nose, and nodded. Yes. I rose, turning toward the painted screen behind the desk. Its rivers and mountains glowed a tranquil jade green. Mother said so too, I murmured. He chuckled faintly behind me. Nonsense again. No, truly. My gaze lingered on the painting, drifting back to the memory of childhood in Xianzhou, of my mother's gentle voice saying, "Your uncle is a wild horse, he'll never stay caged at home." Silence fell behind me. Later, I went on softly, she laughed, so proud, and said, "Good. Let him go. The world is vast, he must make it his own. He'll protect the realm, and I'll guard the home. Whether he shines or falters, he'll always have a roof waiting, a place that will never vanish." Before me, the painted landscape seemed to breathe, the distant hills, the travelers on the roads, the bustling markets, the lofty towers of the capital. I reached out, fingertips brushing air as if touching the living land. "Uncle," I whispered, "this is your world now. A realm at peace, a nation whole. You once said we were each other's family, but things have changed. Now all under heaven are your family. You've ended chaos, borne the weight of it all, wasn't it so that no one would suffer unjustly again? So that those wronged would find justice, and those worthy would be heard. When that day comes, the people will know, their emperor is one worth following, worth revering for generations." I turned and smiled through tears. Isn't that the mark of a true sovereign? The sunlight spilled through the open windows, glinting on the gold-threaded floor tiles. He stood silent, staring at the painting, his tall shadow stretching across the gauze curtain. Outside, the crimson steps burned beneath the spring sun. Months later, the verdict came. A decree from the throne restored the honors of the Qianzhou veterans, 3,000 soldiers vindicated at last, monuments raised for the fallen, names returned to the living. The corrupt officials, Xiao, He, and their ilk, were executed and displayed at the 9 frontier gates as warning. And after many petitions and tears on my knees, the engagement with Yao Zongxia was finally dissolved. My uncle looked at me then, weariness clouding his eyes. "The capital does not suit you?" he asked quietly. "Why so eager to leave?" I bowed low, forehead touching the cold tiles. "Uncle, I've grown up. Like you, and my parents, I have someone I wish to protect, a home I wish to keep." He studied me, lips pressed thin, and lifted a memorial scroll to hide his face. "Wings hardened, can't be caged," he muttered. "But that man you fancy, entering the 2 families' gates won't be so easy. Let him try next year's imperial examination. We'll see if he's worthy." He had yielded. Joy surged through me. I rose, beaming, and bowed again. Thank you, uncle. He only sighed behind the scroll and waved a hand. Go. I gathered my skirts and ran from the hall, laughter echoing against marble pillars. Summer had come, the trees full and green, the palace corridors bathed in flickering light like woven silk. But at the turn of a corridor, my steps halted. A woman stood there, her gown like drifting clouds, elegant and still. She tilted her chin, gazing toward the endless blue. Her voice was cool, clear. For the sake of a crippled servant, you'd give up a life of glory and splendor. Tell me, is it worth it? I remembered what the old maid once told me. That she had begged my uncle to let her go for the peace marriage. So I asked in return, then for glory and wealth, you would willingly leave your homeland, marry into a foreign frontier of wind and sand, is that worth it? Light flickered in her lashes. She smiled faintly and looked straight at me. You and I are not the same. Back in Xianzhou, you were the treasure of your family. But I was merely one among dozens of my father's daughters. When I saw him rising higher and acting more recklessly by the day, I knew I couldn't rely on such a family. He never thought of me, and so I could only think for myself. Seeing my gaze, she shook her head lightly. Don't look at me with that pitying face. You always do that, it's disgusting. We'll see who ends up living better in the end. I chuckled softly, remembering the past. You were always clever. She blinked, then gave a small, surprised laugh. So you do remember. I remember you taught me to ride, I said, stepping closer. Side by side, she glanced at me. And you always let go of the reins halfway, pretending you were still behind me. I'd panic, fall flat into the mud, and you'd laugh yourself sick. A strict teacher makes a fine student, I teased. If not for you, how would I ride so well? She sniffed. Smooth-tongued as ever. And you, I shot back lightly, always tattling. I grinned. Every time I snuck out of the academy, wasn't it you who reported me? Got me whipped by my mother. She straightened, indignant. You never suffered anything. Before the cane even touched you, that little fiancé of yours was already crying, begging to take the beating in your stead. We looked at each other, and suddenly both burst into laughter. I tilted my head toward the vast blue sky beyond the palace roofs and breathed deep. Why don't we make peace? Life's too short, and surely you don't hate me that much. For a moment she hesitated, then turned away, her steps quickening. Never. She called over her shoulder, waving a slender hand. I'll hate you forever. That autumn, she married into the Jin kingdom under the title of princess, bringing with her Buddha statues, scriptures, pearls, and gold. Outwardly, it looked like the glory she had always wanted. My uncle truly had a talent for coaxing people. His words were gentle, but when Zhao Jiazong passed the imperial exams the next year, he deliberately arranged it so that Zhao ranked low, far from a capital posting. I glared at him resentfully. My uncle hid behind a memorial scroll, pretending innocence. These rankings were decided by the ministers of the examination office. Would you have me bend the rules for you? Then he peeked over the scroll. You're only 21. A few more years won't kill you. I can afford to keep you. What's the rush? I sulked for half a day, chin in hand. But then I thought, perhaps it wasn't so bad. Zhao Jiazong was proud. He would never accept being a lame scholar hidden in Xianzhou. He needed the world to temper him. Fine, I said grandly. Go then. He dressed simply, a single wooden hairpin of crabapple wood in his hair, wearing nothing but the jade pendant I had given him years ago. By the river, his eyes were full of unspoken tenderness. Seeing my reluctance, he bent slightly, head tilted, gazing at me. Yuan Ai, what if I don't go? I startled. You can't. Without rank or office, how could my family ever let me marry you? He laughed softly. Then I'll be your concubine. Keep me outside the main house. I'll wait until my lady feels kind enough to visit. I stared, torn between anger and laughter, and smacked his arm. Still want me to feed you, do you? Go. If you don't rank top 3 within 3 years, don't bother coming back. He clutched his arm, pretending pain, then suddenly caught my wrist and drew me into his arms, resting his head against my shoulder. You on AI? I can't bear to leave you. After a long moment, he lifted my face gently, his fingers brushing my cheek. In his mist-gray eyes lingered a sorrow like endless rain. But I fear, he whispered, that I will never be worthy of you. So I wish you would treat me worse. A little worse still. I laughed through the ache in my throat. Didn't I torment you enough as a child? Not enough, he smiled. Even 10 lifetimes wouldn't be enough. And so he left. But this farewell was not an ending. Merely a promise that our next meeting would be brighter. The river mist thickened, and I stood watching until he vanished beyond the turning current. When I turned back, I caught sight of another familiar figure. Yao Zongxia, sitting quietly at a roadside tea house, sword at his hip, watching from afar. Since he'd seen me already, it would be too rude to ignore him. I crossed over, glancing at his horse and attendants. Where are you headed? He smirked faintly. Would it matter to you? The words clashed, brittle. I turned to leave. Wait. His tone softened. Say 2 more sentences to me. After that, I won't bother you again. I hesitated, then sat across from him. He rinsed the cups, poured me tea, but didn't touch his own, just watched me sip. That same detached, weary gaze. In the shadow, his face was unreadable. Before you lost your memory, he said slowly, we sat like this many times in Yuzhou. You just chose to forget. My throat tightened. I don't remember. He traced the rim of his cup. You always said that after your amnesia, I looked at you with disgust. But you were right about one thing, I was angry. Because no matter before or after, the way you looked at me was the same, as if you were looking at someone else. In Yuzhou, you often called me by his name. I thought you'd forget after losing your memory. But you didn't. Tell me, how could I accept that? I had no answer. Silence pressed between us. Then he reached into his sleeve and placed a silk pouch on the table, the same one I once embroidered for him. His voice was low, almost mocking. Next time, try to improve your stitching. Wouldn't want your husband to be embarrassed. With that, he stood, fastened his sword, and left. Sunlight spilled through the latticed roof. I couldn't see his face clearly. Only the ringing of his horse's hooves faded down the road, and his voice drifted back. Consider it a wedding gift. Wear it, or throw it away, it's up to you. I stood there, stunned. Someone nearby murmured, that's the young Marquis, isn't it? They say he's taking command at the frontier now. Strange fellow, has a noble title but refuses to inherit, choosing hardship instead. I opened the pouch. Inside lay a green jade ring carved in the shape of a flying swallow. The traditional token of betrothal among noble families, symbolizing fidelity and lifelong union. I didn't wear it. I didn't throw it away either. On my wedding day, I placed it gently in a wooden box, high on a shelf. And for the rest of my life, I never once opened it again. The end.